wanted to ask you about the summit and your call this morning, and I realize that you don't. No one likes to rank threats or issues in terms of importance, but a lot of it, what you just talked about, is related to North Korea. But China is also an issue. So, if you, how much of the summit do you think is going to be focused on China, and how much on North Korea, at least in terms of the security elements?
What's evolved over the last now 8 years or so, going back to 2015, 2016, when I started to work on this as Deputy Secretary, is a trilateral grouping, cooperation among our three countries that's really evolved from, as I said, first to some extent a focus on helping and supporting Japan and Korea deal with some historical legacy issues, to initially an intense focus on North Korea, to a much more expansive agenda that, of course, continues to focus on North Korea given the endless provocative actions it's taken, but also much more expansively to advance what is a shared vision, as I've described it, for a free and open, resilient, secure, connected Indo-Pacific. So I think much of what you will see come out of this summit are concrete initiatives that address the broad expanse of that affirmative agenda, including security questions, including economic security questions, but also including things like coordination on development aid, on humanitarian assistance, on shaping the use of emerging technologies, on greater people-to-people exchanges. So I don't think there's any one thing that will dominate. But of course, at the heart of our respective bilateral alliances and at the heart of the work that we're doing together as three countries is security. And again, I don't want to get ahead of what will happen on Friday, but I think you'll see some very concrete measures that we're taking to enhance our capacity to provide for our security as three countries, and also more broadly security in the Indo-Pacific region.
I'm going to ask you the question I was going to ask the Secretary. It just occurs to me that he spoke about this weekend, the trilateral summit, and a broad range of issues that need to be addressed, economic, security-wise, and many of those are inherently related to China. But even in response to Matt's question, he avoided saying the word China throughout, his discussion of the trilateral summit. So I'm just wondering why the Secretary is apparently avoiding, outright saying that this weekend will be about the China threat in some way, shape, or form.
So I will say a couple things about that. First, the important thing to remember is that our approach to the PRC has been consistent from the beginning, and part of that, and you've seen the Secretary and others talk about this, is not just investing within ourselves, within the United States, but also deepening our alliance and convergence with our partners and allies, including, of course, the ROK and Japan. And to be clear, as you've heard us say before, we do not seek conflict or confrontation or a new Cold War, and you've seen consistent efforts on this from this administration to manage our competition with the PRC responsibly. But another piece of this, Kylie, is that we are not asking countries to choose between the United States and the PRC. What this is about is offering countries a choice of what partnership with the United States could look like, what a shared vision for a free and open world and a free and open Indo-Pacific can look like. That's not hyperbole. That is, in fact, our approach when it comes to the PRC, when it comes to countries around the world. And I think where we are seeing that in fruition is examples of this trilateral engagement, where of course an aspect of this is deeper alliance with important regional partners like the Republic of Korea and Japan, but there's also areas of immense cooperation that are important for the people of our three countries. Some of these areas that you mentioned, climate, energy, economic cooperation, further security partnerships as well. A lot of these things I think you'll see the leaders speak to at the tail end of this week, so I'm not going to get ahead of that process. Go ahead, Olivia. Yeah.
I mean, I think, Scott, we recently saw an historically large naval exercise jointly conducted by the Russians and the Chinese. So what effect do you think that, these long-standing commitments that are expected to be made this weekend are going to have on what appear to have been really painstaking efforts by this administration to reestablish communication channels with China, coming as they are on the heels of other moves that Beijing has said or it views as provocative? And does Russia in particular stand to gain from a military standpoint here?
Olivia, I would say that these things are not mutually exclusive. I think one, we believe that it is important for us to manage our relationship with the PRC responsibly. It's not just something that we expect of the PRC and ourselves, it's something that the international community expects of us also. But through that, we also can continue to invest in ourselves, invest in our alliances and partnerships with countries in the region like Korea and Japan as well. But we also have been clear about the continued concern of the PRC and Russia closening their relationship and the steps that they've taken as well. So I don't think these things are zero-sum. We can continue to pursue all of these things appropriately.
To counter the U.S. South Korea Japan summit, Chinese and Russian ambassadors met and held talks in Seoul, Korea, and Pyongyang. What symbolism do you think this is?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of your question?
Because the Chinese and the Russian ambassadors met and held talks in between Seoul and Pyongyang.
Got it. So I think I spoke a little bit about this, so I will just reiterate that we are concerned about the PRC's continued alignment with Russia. I will let those two countries speak to their respective bilateral engagements, but this is something that we are continuing to pay close attention to, and we have been clear to the PRC that providing lethal aid to Russia or providing Russia the means to systemically evade our sanctions would have serious implications.
And China has criticized the upcoming Camp David summit as an attempt to create a mini NATO. Would you like to comment?
So again, what this summit is about is getting countries together that share a vision of a free and open world, a free and open Indo-Pacific, an area that is interconnected, where people and goods can flow appropriately, where countries are free from coercion and able to choose their own path. And that is what we're looking forward to having the leaders discuss this at the end of this week at Camp David, and I'm sure that they will have more to announce from there as well. Vivian, I know you've had your hand up patiently.
I was actually going to ask about China's claims that this is a mini NATO, but what assurances, if any, has the U.S. given China that this is not meant to be a provocation directly against Beijing, but it's more about, strategic alliances in the region? I mean, anything that has sort of eased that concern with them. Obviously, we saw Russia had similar concerns about the real NATO, and uses it as its claim or its justification for its actions against Ukraine. And so what, if any, efforts are you doing to kind of prevent that from happening in East Asia?
There is no reason to view this summit as provocative or any kind of step or effort to incite tensions. What this is about is deepening our partnership and collaboration on a number of areas that we believe are in the mutual shared interest of our three countries, and a lot of those are going to be in a lot of various spaces. Again, I don't want to get ahead of the president, and so I will let the summit speak for itself.
Taiwan's vice president transited through, will be transiting back through later on in a few days. There's been the response from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, which usually does respond to these types of things. Has the United States noticed a change or evolution in the way that China has been responding to these types of transits?
So I'm not going to assess or analyze actions that the PRC may or may not have taken from up here. What I will just say, and I touched a little bit on this yesterday, is that there's no reason for Beijing to turn this transit, which is, as I will reiterate, it is consistent with longstanding U.S. policy and practice, into any kind of pretext for coercion or any kind of provocative activity. We do not intend to change the status quo. Such transits are consistent with our One China policy, and that will continue to be the case.